Hello and welcome to the Sounds a Bit Woo-Woo to Me podcast. Each week we'll take a deep dive look into an alternative therapy, spiritual practice, or a holistic wellbeing approach that might raise a skeptical eyebrow, be slightly misunderstood, and for some be considered a bit woo-woo. Here's this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the podcast. My name is Becky Taylor. I am a yoga teacher and a wellbeing enthusiast. Before we get into today's podcast, I wanted to let you know that I am offering a free 60-minute yoga class with me. All you have to do is sign up to my yoga newsletter, and you can do that at beckytayloryoga.co.uk. Now back to the podcast. This week's guest is Louisa Hussey. Louisa is an EFT practitioner, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and it's sometimes known as tapping therapy. Louisa's going to talk to us about quite what tapping therapy is, how it works, and how we can all feel better one tap at a time. So Louisa Hussey, welcome to the podcast today.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So I came across you wearing a rather fantastic, sparkly sequin top on social media. And then I went down into a bit of a rabbit warren watching your videos because I was just so intrigued about EFT, or tapping as it's sometimes known. And I really liked how it felt like you were a pal telling me about it rather than, a preacher really ramming it down my throat. So I'm really excited to have you here, and thank you for taking some time out to talk about EFT. So thank you. On this show, we look closer at the things that are often considered a bit woo-woo, things that are misunderstood, and these can be things like spiritual practices, alternative therapies, holistic treatments, and I feel like EFT tapping really fits into that. So I'm excited to get down to the nitty-gritty of what it exactly it is, and to clear up a little bit of that mystique about it. So I guess my first question for you is, what is it, and what does it stand for?
Yeah, and that's exactly it. What even is this? And that's exactly how I felt when I first saw it. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. So that is its Sunday name, if you will. And it is a little bit better known as tapping because you literally tap on your face. You actually do tapping. But what it actually does is when you tap on your face and your upper body, and there's certain spots and there's a sequence that you follow with the tapping, you also verbalize what is physically and emotionally happening for you. So it's a little bit like a combination of acupuncture, which lots of people are a little bit more familiar with, in that you use acupressure points. And the other combination is with maybe coaching or a therapy kind of style of talking. So, for example, my clients come to me and they say, I want to be achieving X, but I know that there's something stopping me. So we get into the point of actually, how do you feel when you talk about wanting what it is that you want? Maybe that's more money, maybe it's more confidence, maybe you want to let go of some sadness. That's the sort of stuff that we deal with. So it's emotional conversations whilst tapping on your face. It looks weird, it sounds weird, but it is the most incredible technique to feel better. That's what it is. My clients come to me feeling usually overwhelmed or angry or upset, and at the end of the sessions with me, they feel lighter, they feel like they can get on with what they want to do, and they are able to process and let go of stuff that has been holding them back.
Before our chat, obviously I was doing some research and I watched a YouTube video of yours, and it was an Instagram live that you'd done that you'd then uploaded to YouTube, and it was a 30-minute tapping session, and that was my first experience ever of EFT.
Yeah.
In that video, you kind of took us through the first round, setting up, thinking about a problem or something that's going on in our lives. And we did the tapping technique. And then we did it again, and you kind of switched the music a little bit that was in the background, slightly more positive language. And then we did it again, and there was even more energy coming from you about how we were thinking about this problem, the words that you were using. And each time for me, I felt more and more relaxed. But I think the main takeaway that I got from it was, by the end of it, I felt really on top of this particular issue and really like in control.
Yeah.
And one of my questions that came off the back of watching that video is, would I get the same benefits from doing that technique, that sequence, alone, or does it kind of get supercharged, turbo boosted by being guided by a practitioner?
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of liken it to wanting to get fit. So if you want to get fit, you can quite easily put on your trainers and go for a run. And you'll get X results depending on the level of effort you put in and the level of commitment and all the rest of it. If you want a bit more support, you can follow a video. So somebody will guide you through. So you could do, I don't know, Davina McCall, for example, if you're so inclined. And again, you get, good results from that. But if you really want to get specific and you want to have really bespoke work that will help your particular stuff really personalised, you'd probably choose a personal trainer.
Yeah.
And they would then really go through what's going on for you, what are your issues, what do you want to come out of it. So when you work with a practitioner like myself and you're guided through what is particularly happening for you, you get huge results. The results are magnified considerably by being with somebody who is guiding you through it. So I work with clients on a one-to-one basis, and the results they get are much quicker, much easier, a lot safer, because they've got somebody going, all right, I can see that this is triggering you. Let's work on that. Let's kind of bring your emotional levels down. Let's calm your state down before we process. And I know that some people, when they do follow like videos online, they've got nobody to kind of hold the hand with it. So they definitely get some results, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos out there. So you can follow somebody like Brad Yates, who is one of the huge American names in tapping. I think he's done a video every week for the past 15 years. He's got like nearly 1,000 videos. So you can go on his page and you can search out, I don't know, tapping for being cross about having sore feet. I don't know, really something particular, and he would have something like that. But his videos are only 10 minutes. So you'll only get a little introduction to what it can do.
Yeah, a small boost. And that makes so much sense, actually, the analogy about, if you were trying to get fit, if you went for your own run, you'd do a little bit. If you watch a DVD, even better. If you had a personal trainer, then yeah, of course, that just makes total sense. Why wouldn't that apply to EFT?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So let's get back to basics then. I know that tapping is about meridian lines and energy lines. Where are these in the body? And I guess my secondary question is, are these places that you're going to tell us about, is it a bit like reflexology? How a lot of people know that in reflexology, they'll rub a certain place on your foot and that corresponds to your liver or whatever. Does it work in the same way?
So it works on I guess it follows similar thought processes. So it is based on acupressure points, and there are, I think there's 8 or 9 on your face and your upper body. So the first one is on the side of your hand, like the karate chop point, where you would, if you were to go and be a karate chop master, that's the first one you tap on. Then you go to the corner of your eyebrow, where if you put your finger up the side of your nose, it's the bit of the eyebrow where it starts. That's the first one on your face. And the second one is at the other side of your eyebrow, then under the eye, under the nose, under the lip, on your collarbones, under your arm, which is always a comedy one because it's about 4 inches down on your bra strap. So I have some clients who are like, this makes my boobs wobble. So if that's uncomfortable for you, you can miss it out. And then the last one is on the top of your head. There's an extended version which includes your fingertips, like the sides of your fingernails. I don't use that one as much, but I know lots of other practitioners do include those. And they are based on acupressure points. So if you are familiar with acupuncture, where the needles go in is very, very precise. Tapping is a little bit more flexible. If you were to tap on maybe 2 centimeters to the side of where I would be tapping, you'd still get the same effect. And I think if you were to really dig into it, you might know that perhaps under the eye is related to a certain point, maybe it's your liver or your kidney. That's not my speciality. I don't know. I'm not a reflexologist or an acupuncturist. And in fact, I was talking to my sister yesterday, who is an acupuncturist. And she's like, oh, but you do talk about acupressure points. I'm like, yeah, I just talk about acupressure. I don't talk about specific positions. And that's the difference, because when you tap, it's the combination of the tapping and the talking that gives the effect.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be tapping under your eye at the same time that I am. You can be tapping somewhere else. It's very much like a holistic approach to it. So you don't need to be thinking, oh, well, I've got problems with my stomach. That must be the under the nose bit, for example, if that's if that's what comes up for you. But the body does talk to you. So, quite often when I'm tapping with clients, and I ask them to tune into where they feel their emotion. If they are wanting to talk about something, or something has happened that somebody has said something, quite often they feel it in their throat. So they say, I'm being blocked from saying it. So they would feel it in their throat. Or sometimes if they're feeling anxiety or they're feeling angry, they feel it in their stomach. And these are sort of places that you might say without even thinking about it, I feel it in the pit of my stomach. That's where the fear is, or anxiety for me always shows up in my chest. So when I tap on my collarbone, that feels particularly soothing for me.
Yeah, I guess grounding and kind of anchoring into it, isn't it? That's what it's doing.
Yeah, and it allows you to really tune into what is physically happening for you. So the body holds emotion, the body holds trauma, and the body talks to you, even though not everybody has their ear to it. In fact, I've had 2 clients in the past 6 months who have come with a number of issues and then said, can we also talk about, I've got really bad I have really bad issues with my bowels, so I get really bad tummy troubles when this happens. And I was like, so, okay, they've been to the doctor, they've been to the hospital, they've had all sorts of, investigations. And actually what they have is anxiety, relating to a memory of something that happened to them when they were younger. And it's, tapping on that feeling and then the thought of what happened then relieved it.
That's amazing, isn't it? It's kind of how it can show up differently in different parts of your body. And this is a bit of a curveball question. If somebody has mobility issues, could somebody tap on those points for them? I'm thinking, if you were paralyzed, or I don't know, or just not very mobile, not able to lift your arms above a certain height or whatever, would it have the same effect?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple of ways that you can do it. So if you work with a practitioner on a face-to-face level, which obviously no one's doing at the minute, the practitioner can tap on them. And I've seen that happen when the client is particularly emotional and their instinct is to stop tapping. Sometimes you hold it all, don't you? You clench. And the practitioner said, well, is it okay if I tap for you? And I've seen practitioners then go and tap on their face. And that obviously has the effect. The other thing that you can do if somebody can't tap for themselves but wants to is there's a technique where you surrogate tap. So, for example, this works sometimes with parents who have children who are maybe having anxiety or anger issues. You can tap for the child. And there's an even quirkier technique where you tap on a teddy bear. It kind of allows you to disassociate from the issue at hand and tap on the bear. It's really weird, but it's incredibly effective, because what you actually do when you tap is you take yourself out of the logical brain and it goes into the subconscious where you can process things.
And I think that's why EFT kind of falls into this category of what we're exploring in this podcast of being perceived by some people as a little bit woo-woo, that kind of holistic approach and the way that pain and issues can show up in our body, and the types of things that are not medical that we can do for our bodies but will still have an effect, obviously raises an eyebrow from a lot of skeptics. What do you say to those people who come across EFT, come across your work and sort of go, that's not for me?
Yeah, well, everyone's got their own belief system, right? And I have a couple of friends who are clinical psychologists who are not open to the conversation about it because it doesn't fall into what they've been taught or trained on. Their medical belief system is different to how I would talk about it. So if people are not up for it, then I don't really bother, to be honest. All I say is it's a fantastic stress reduction tool. It works even if you don't believe in it, but you have to be open to the idea of dealing with your emotions. And so I have a number of close family and friends who do not like talking about emotional stuff, so they're completely closed to it. And that's completely their choice, right? They can do what they want with life. So the clients and the people that I work with are usually open to the idea of, well, hang on a minute, I've got this stuff going on and I've been to counselling about it, or I've been to all the doctors and nothing has helped. Either this is it for the rest of my life. And when I mean it could be a physical issue. So they may go, well, I'll just have to put up with my IBS, for example, forever because nothing works. Or it might be, this is just how life is for me. My confidence is never going to be high because that's who I am. And the clients that come to me go, well, hang on a minute. This can't be it. This can't be it. This can't be all I'm here to do. There must be an option to let go of stuff. And usually my clients have got something that they want to get over or move on from, you know. And it's really interesting because I work with women of all ages. And the past couple of months, I've had 2 clients in their 60s who are fascinating because they've spent 60 years living with their thoughts and beliefs and physical things. And then they've suddenly gone, I'm not having it anymore. How fantastic to be able to get to that point and go, I'm going to sort it out.
Yeah, good for them. I think you're right. It's just about having an open mind, you know, and I guess for people that do raise an eyebrow to it, the answer is, well, have you actually tried it? You never know until you try things, do you? And fair enough, it might not resonate with a lot of people, and that's totally fine. But I think it's just having that open mind. And I can imagine for you, you get such better results when it is somebody that is looking for help and is looking to find some sort of relief or an answer or whatever. And I know that you've had some personal experience of EFT curing physical pain in your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The very first time I came across EFT was on a confidence course, actually. I was coming off the back of mat leave, and like many new mums were a bit like, oh my God, what the hell is going on in life? You know, because your world tips upside down and you don't know who you are and you can't remember anything and you're knackered. And so that's the first time I came to it. And then after like 5 minutes of watching it, I was like, this is my thing. I then did my training course. And in the training course, they asked the volunteers to demonstrate how it would work. And everyone's obviously sat there going, oh my God, I don't want to be the volunteer. I said, well, has somebody got a physical issue that we could work on? And when I was 13, I think, I fell off one of the gym horses at school and I cracked my neck. And, you know, it was never anything serious, but I've had back pain and back issues ever since. So I was like, well, I've just got this dull ache it has just always been there. It's so much the point. It is just who I am. Louisa is the girl that is constantly pinching her neck, cracking her neck, you know, tipping her head around. So we tapped, and within about, it must have been about 20 minutes, it had gone almost completely. And we talked about what happened when I fell off the horse, to the point where we go, who was with you? What did the teacher say? What could you hear? So, you know, we actually tapped on. And then the teacher said, don't be silly, get up. And then the girls around me said, don't be silly, get up. So there's shame around it. So I was tapping on some of the shame and embarrassment of what happened, as well as tapping on the fact that it really hurt. And I was really worried. I thought I'd caused permanent damage. You know, all those teeny tiny little, what's the word? Sort of like every little piece that completely added up to the fact that my backache has never gone. When really, in theory, 3 days later, I was fine. The bruise had gone, you know, that sort of stuff. In theory, my body was healed, but my body had held on to all of those emotions attached to falling off the horse. So I'd never let go of the fact that it was mortifying, because everybody else was fine. And everyone else could do a backwards roly-poly off a gymnastic course, you know?
Yeah, you just carried that with you. That just lived then, you know, inside you.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, you know, that's something that happened to you as a kid at school in gymnastics, and you were an ex-teacher. That's right, yeah?
Yeah.
Did you teach young kids?
Infants I taught for my sins.
Do you think that EFT is something that could be beneficial for children and in the school system? Do you think it's something that if it was added to the end of assembly every day, or, you know, in some way in the wellbeing curriculum, do you think that would be beneficial? And do you think that would ever happen?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I tap a little bit with my 3-year-old. She's a little bit open to it. She likes reading the stories about it. And she knows that mummy taps and mummy helps people feel better. She knows that. I've done a little bit with my stepson, who's nearly 10. And he's a little bit more resistant to it because he has some emotional needs at the minute. So he's a little bit more like, I don't want to talk about how I feel. But I had a client a while ago who came to me because she said her son had been given tapping when he started school. I think he was 5, to cope with transition and anxiety. And that was really interesting because she said she wasn't taught it. So she wasn't taught how to support him with it. And I was like, well, that's completely backwards, because how are you supposed to then carry that at home if you don't even know what you're doing? So It is available. I know it does happen in certain places, but it's obviously not mainstream. It's not included in curriculums and all the rest of it, but it definitely works with kids because they don't have 30 years of belief system built up that life is supposed to be difficult or hard or complicated. They just are, oh, right, this makes me feel nice.
Yeah. What an incredible tool that little boy's been given. The 5-year-old mentioned to be given tapping as a way to cope. That's fantastic. And I feel like EFT is getting a little bit more kudos in the mainstream. And this might be because of what I read about NICE, the UK government body that advises on healthcare practices, and that it was the first in the world to approve research funding for EFT, specifically for those suffering with PTSD. But that must have just been huge for EFT practitioners, a real kind of like, aha, you see, we told you moment, for them to be investing into studies and research into it in a more kind of medical capacity is an amazing endorsement.
Absolutely. And I know of other practitioners who get given work from GPs, if they specialise specifically in medical conditions or serious illnesses, because it works really well for people who have long-term pain. This isn't my speciality at all, but I remember reading, I think it was on LinkedIn, somebody said, oh, how wonderful that their local GP is now referring patients to them, because they're like, you go to the doctor and the doctor identifies the presenting issue. You have back pain, here is the back pain medicine. They don't have the time to dig into why do you have back pain. They just diagnose, right? And they do amazing work. The NHS is fantastic, but it doesn't work for everybody. And there are often things, like I mentioned, that the clients that I have who have tummy troubles and they just thought they just always had IBS. And I'm like, well, I wonder if it IBS. And and the conversation that when you tap and you talk, those are the sort of questions I ask, like, I wonder what this actually is. And then their brain then goes, I've thought of a picture. I've got a picture here of being in an exam, so age 15 or whatever, feeling sick, desperately needing the toilet, even though I've just been. And at the same time, my mum and dad were arguing that morning or whatever it was. And so they've never associated the physical issue with the emotional issue, and to be able to relieve the emotional side of it is huge.
Yeah, it's so fascinating, and the different ways that it can help in different issues. I know that the absolute sort of research guru in EFT is Dr. Peter Stapleton.
Oh yeah,
and she's done a lot of research for many years into just doing studies into EFT. What are the kind of things that the science is telling us about EFT? I read something that they found that it actually changes the amygdala. Is that right? It has a direct effect on the amygdala in the brain.
Yeah, that's right. So Dr. Peter, she's an Australian lady. I actually interviewed her this year. She's so lovely. All of her research is around weight and eating disorders. And what she discovered is when you tap, the tapping effect sends a safety signal. This is real layman's term. This is the only way I can explain it. It sends a safety signal to the amygdala in your brain, which is the bit responsible for fight or flight or freeze. And what it does is it allows the amygdala to send a signal to the rest of your brain telling you that you're safe. So when you're talking about emotional stuff or traumatic stuff, trauma can be capital T or little t, then your body then instinctively goes into preservation mode. Oh my God, I'm still in that situation. So if you're talking about a car crash, for example, your body will react as if you were still in that accident and what the doctor said and what the ambulance did and all the rest of it. So the research is the amygdala then sends a signal out saying, you're actually okay, you're not there anymore, it's safe to talk about, it's safe to process it. And essentially it changes the brain waves, it changes the way your brain processes it all and how you then are able to think about it. So the science of it is fascinating, and she's got hundreds and hundreds of studies where she's discovered that the weight, she did specifically a lot of weight studies, the people associate eating with certain emotional stuff. I think a lot of people know that eating issues are usually an emotional issue. And she said that the weight comes off because they learn that they don't need sugar or chocolate or cake or whatever it is to feel okay. And then the weight, when it comes off, it never goes back on. They never go back. it's a permanent change. And isn't that just incredible?
So that's when they've been using tapping to help with the issue.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's nothing to do with diets. They just stop thinking the same way they always have. That's her research. You know, you can Google her and listen to all of her stuff. It's fascinating.
Amazing. And I read that she'd said somewhere like 1 hour of tapping showed, I think I wrote it down. 1 hour of tapping showed 43% reduction in cortisol, which is a stress hormone, in their studies, which that is a huge percentage, 43%. You're almost half as stressed.
Yeah, and you see that when my clients, you physically see it. So I always ask my clients to rate the intensity of what they're feeling. So, for example, I had a client who had a real phobia of the tube in London, and when we talked about it, I said, "How do you feel thinking about getting on it?" She's like, "I'm a 10. It's 10 out of 10. It's really, really intense for me." And she would sit there, and I do all my stuff over Zoom. Who doesn't? And she sat there and she's hunched over, you know, and she's looking down, and I can see that she's really in a really intense state of emotion. And we're tapping and we're talking about it and we're going round and we're getting it all out. And then by the end of the session, she was sitting back in a chair, sitting up straight, to the point where her head was off the screen because she hadn't ever sat up that tall before. So she had set her computer laptop screen at an angle where she is used to be sitting. But, you know, her posture led her to that height. But after an hour of tapping on this particular issue, she was sitting up so tall that her head was off the screen.
Wow, what a transformation.
Incredible. And I'm laughing. I can't even see you anymore. You changed so much. And that's another thing that I find brilliant about tapping is whilst you do talk about some really heavy stuff, you know, people have got big stuff that happened that they, you know, whatever it is that they bring. And some of it is, you know, long-standing emotional stuff. And I'm like, we might be talking about big stuff, but I promise you it won't be sad. It won't be stressful. It will be light because you are in charge of dealing with it. You get to choose whether you want to feel like that anymore or whether you want to let go and move on with your life. And I'd say 100% of my clients, we laugh in our sessions. So it's not like going to counselling where quite often it's draining and, you know, or you go to some sort of therapy. And many of my clients have been through, you know, down that road, and it can feel quite heavy at the end of it because you're really trudging through the stuff. And I'm like, well, we will look at the stuff, definitely, but we're not going to stay there. It's progressive. So where you are today, where do you want to go? That's the focus on all of it. And I'm going to make you laugh in it because you're going to make yourself laugh because eventually you'll realise when you're letting go of some of the old beliefs, how silly they were. Like, how stupid was it that was a really big thing? And that's the change, you know?
How fantastic. And probably laughing as well at just the physical release, you know, of just being relieved of that weight anymore.
Absolutely.
I read a really wonderful blog post that you'd put on your website about a woman that I also love and adore, Elizabeth Gilbert, and a story that she told that happened to her in New York. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that? Because the way that you wrote about it and how it made you feel just really resonated with me as well, and the way that it relates to EFT.
So the story was that she was on a cross-city bus in New York, and it was cold and wet and raining in December. And she said everybody on the bus was wet and cold and miserable. And she said, you know, you can feel the heaviness of the emotion on the bus. Everybody looked really blue. And the bus driver acknowledged it and said, I can see that everyone looks like they've had a really tough day. So when you get off the bus, I invite you to leave your troubles with me. Oh, do you know, I'm getting a bit emotional thinking about it. And he said, I will put my hand out, and when you walk past, I invite you to give me your troubles, and I will take them at the end of my shift and throw them in the Hudson River. And he said, do not take home with you what you have, because your family need you, and don't take it. Let me have it, and I will look after it. So Elizabeth Gilbert's obviously sat there going, bloody hell, this looks, you know, fascinated to know what would happen. I said, at every stop, everyone getting off gave something to the driver. Imaginary, you know, they picked up their hand and they gave him their troubles. And she said, and some did it laughing. Ha ha, there you go, don't need that.
Yeah, you deal with that.
And because she said the whole bus was a bit like, what is this man saying? You know, what a weird thing. You know, we're New Yorkers, we don't talk to bus drivers, whatever. And she said some people were laughing and that others were sobbing because they were obviously holding on to something so heavy. And she said, and others bowed their head and prayed, you know, so the people gave their things in whatever arena felt safe for them. And she said, I sat on that bus until the end of his shift just to see what he'd do. I said, at the end of his shift, he opened his window and dramatically threw everything into the river. She talked about it being brave and about being self-confident in actually what you are able to do in life. And he obviously recognised that he had the capacity to help people. He saw that they had stuff that he could take from them without it being an impact for him. You know, he was safe enough and brave enough to be able to do it. So that just resonated with me because that's what my clients do for me. I take their stuff, they offload it to me in whatever shape is safe for them, and I help them carry it until they're ready to let go. So really, whilst I felt a little bit like the bus driver at the time, actually they're their own bus driver. I'm just there to be on the journey with them, particularly if they've got a traumatic memory that happened to them. The clients I speak, they go, I have to feel like this because this happened to me. This is me. This is part of who I am. And I question that and I'm like, is it part of you? Or can you loosen it? Can you let go of it? What would it be like if you didn't have this thing? One of my clients called it her shadow. Something was always with her that she had to explain to people. So I was like, well, is it attached to you, or can we unpick it? Can we peel this shadow off so it's next to you, but it's not on you? And over a course of, I think we did 5 sessions initially, she said, I can now see that he is next to me, this shadow, but he's not on me anymore. And within those 5 sessions, she also told me that she tripled her monthly income.
Oh.
Because the only thing she'd been doing differently was acknowledging the stuff that was stopping her doing what she wanted.
Yeah.
This shadow was stopping her from being her authentic self, stopping her from being as vocal as she wanted. A lot of her things was about being able to talk up and, you know, ask for more money, put her rates up and all that sort of stuff. So that was incredible for her to suddenly go, oh God, he's not on me.
Yeah.
I could maybe leave him at home tomorrow, you know, and we worked together to, I think he disappeared actually by the end of our sessions in total.
Do you ever feel burdened then by sort of being the metaphorical bus driver with your clients giving you their issues and you helping them to work through it? Or are you able for yourself personally to be quite clear on drawing the line between, you know, your work and then what you take on board?
I'm never burdened with it. To be honest, I find it a real privilege to be the person that they trust. And, you know, that all goes down to people invest in people, don't they? And people who don't like me probably won't book with me. They'll book with somebody else. And that's the way it works, right? But I never feel burdened. I never take it. I never come off a call going, oh God, because I tap as well. So I'm tapping, which protects my energy levels. So I have to make sure that I am not absorbing their stuff. That's why we tap, you know. So the tapping protects us both. So I never keep it. You know, my whole life, I've always felt compelled to be in some sort of helping capacity. So, I really dallied around the idea of being a counsellor for a really long time. And I worked in the third sector in the charities for most of my career because I felt like I wanted to help people, and where better to do that than in a charity when people really need it. But I used to take it, you know, people would call you and cry all day and I'd be like, oh my God. I'd come home thinking, you know, the world was ending because I'd heard all the bad stories. Whereas with tapping, I get to help, which is the perfect job for me.
Well, I'm so pleased that you've found your perfect vocation. It sounds like you're just absolutely suited to what you do in terms of helping people and helping them to release emotions or physical pains, but also having a bit of fun with it as well, and, you know, not getting too sort of heavy, as you say, like sometimes counselling sessions can perhaps get. I've learned so much from you in this past 40 minutes. Thank you so much for chatting to us. Where can people find you, Louisa?
Well, I'm obviously all over the social. So I'm on Instagram and I'm on Facebook. So you can just find me at Louisa Hussey EFT. I couldn't think of anything cleverer than that. And my website is just louisahussey.com. So people can message me on whatever platform feels good to them.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Louisa. It's been an absolute joy.
Thank you for having me.
Well, what a fascinating chat with Louisa. I hope you found it interesting and of benefit. And as Louisa said, if you want to find out more about tapping or the work that she does, you can find her on Instagram at Louisa Hussey. That's Hussey. I'm also on Instagram at Becky Taylor Yoga. And if you want to take me up on the offer of a free hour-long live Zoom yoga class, you can do so by signing up to my newsletter, and that's over at beckytayloryoga.co.uk. I would love to see you in class. Until next week, namaste.